All right, let's dive into something really provocative. We're looking at the journalist H.L. Mencken and a concept he cooked up back in 1926 in his book Notes on Democracy. He called it the eternal mob. And let me tell you, it's his absolutely blistering, no-holds-barred verdict on the common person. It was controversial then, and it's just as likely to stir things up today.
So Mencken doesn't waste any time. He doesn't pull any punches. He opens with this gut punch of a line right here. It sets a tone that is, well, anything but optimistic. This isn't just a critique. He's delivering a final verdict, and it's the foundation for everything else he's about to say.
Mencken's whole argument isn't some hopeful call to action. He literally calls it a funeral march. And that phrase, that tells you everything you need to know about his deeply pessimistic and frankly unchangeable view of the average person's role in society.
The key word to hang on to here is eternal. Mencken isn't suggesting this is just a phase, that the mob will eventually smarten up and evolve. Nope. For him, this is a permanent state of being. It's a constant, unchanging force that, by its very nature, is always going to be pushing back against any real, genuine progress.
So, okay, if this mob is this permanent thing, what does it actually look like? What are its defining features? Well, this is where Mencken starts to paint what you can only call a deeply unflattering portrait, breaking down the specific traits he sees in this group. And here is his formal definition. He calls them the man on the nether levels. He sees this person as fundamentally incapable of ever really getting the best parts of progress. The real takeaway here is his belief that this person has barely changed at all since ancient times. And in the ways they have changed, it's usually been for the worse. And he doesn't just talk in generalities either. He gets incredibly specific. He argues the mob just swaps its belief in literal witches for a belief in political ones. He says they're a slave to priests, that they're fundamentally lazy and unclean. And get this, according to Mencken, they can't grasp anything true or beautiful, and the heroes they choose to follow are almost always, in his words, scoundrels.
This quote really gets to the heart of his point about their judgment. For Mencken, it's not about just making a mistake every now and then, no. It's what he calls a pathological compulsion to actively choose the wrong thing, the bad idea, the lie. It's like a perfect, almost infallible instinct for getting it wrong.
So you might be thinking, is this just Mencken ranting, or does he actually think he has evidence for all this? Well, he tries to prove his whole theory by taking a look at the mob's track record throughout history. His argument? They are consistently, without fail, on the wrong side of everything.
And what he lays out is this really stark contrast. Take a look. On one side, you've got the mob's heroes, the tyrants and butchers he claims they absolutely adore. Guys like Nero, the persecutor, Torquemada, the Grand Inquisitor. And on the other side, the very people they oppose, the thinkers, the reformers, the liberators of the spirit, like Galileo. For Mencken, this is no accident. It's a predictable, repeating pattern.
And here's the real kicker for Mencken: the total and complete lack of any genuine moral progress. He sees a direct, straight line connecting the brutalities of the ancient Roman arena to the modern-day lynching party. To him, the technology might change, the location might change, but that underlying ugly instinct, it stays exactly the same.
All right, now we pivot to one of Mencken's most fiery critiques, and that is his take on religion. He basically argues that the version of Christianity that most people practice isn't some ancient, sacred truth. Instead, it's something that has been specifically packaged, designed for, and even by the mob. Mencken uses this rhetorical question as a kind of launchpad. He totally anticipates the counterargument. What about the simple, pious faith of the common person? And he just dismisses it with a sharp, cynical question of his own. What faith are you even talking about? His answer is to argue that there are actually two different Christianities. First, you have the system of Christ, which he describes as logical, tough, austere, and ultimately a system for gentlemen. Then you have the invention of the Apostle Paul, which he calls nonsensical, feel-good, comfortable balderdash that was made explicitly for the mob. So why did this big split even happen? Well, according to Mencken's reading of history, the mob rejected Christ's original message precisely because it was too logical and way too demanding. They didn't want a tough moral code, they wanted that comfortable balderdash he mentioned, and so they turned on him, which Mencken argues created a vacuum. And that vacuum was filled by the man he points to as the ultimate mob master, the one who successfully repackaged religion for the masses, the Apostle Paul. Mencken gives him a pretty serious title, the arch-theologian of the mob. So what was Paul's secret sauce?
according to Mencken? Well, he lays out the formula. He claims Paul, having been a labor leader, knew his audience inside and out. He knew that comforting nonsense was their preferred food. He knew that things that didn't make sense could be soothing, like music. So he just borrowed ideas from all over the place to create this perfect mix of doctrines that the mob would eat right up. And Mencken doesn't just leave it in the past. He traces this influence right through history. He calls Paul a prophet of the sewers in the ancient world, says he got pushed aside during the aristocratic Middle Ages, only to come roaring back during the Reformation and beyond. And for Mencken, Paul's ideas are more alive and influential than ever today. And this really brings us to the bottom line for Mencken on this whole topic. Paul's witless metaphysics didn't just add a little something to Christianity, it made the whole thing bearable for the masses. It took what Mencken saw as Christ's simple, demanding code of conduct, basically the duties of a gentleman, and swapped it out for a theology the mob could actually swallow. So, this leaves us with a huge, provocative question, doesn't it? Is Mencken's deeply cynical, you might even say elitist view, just a dusty old artifact from the 1920s? Or does his idea of an eternal mob, a permanent force that resists progress and loves nonsense, actually describe something timeless that's still very much at play in our world today?